All right, welcome back. I have now taken off Buzz's arm and I'm going to go through the muscles of the arm unattached from Buzz's body. Just makes it a little bit easier for handling. All right, so the first one of muscles of the arm, remember the arm is your brachium, forearm is your antebrachium. So I'm just gonna cover the whole arm model in this one video. So the first muscle on your list is your biceps brachii. This is probably the most talked about muscle. I know I use it a lot in my examples, but it's your, your big guns when you flex. When you make a muscle, you are flexing your biceps. So the origin is your coracoid process of your coracoid process of the scapula. It's a bicep. It's got two heads. We're just going to have you learn the one coracoid process of the scapula. Inserts on the radial tuberosity of the radius, if you'll remember that from our bone list. So keeping aware that this muscle actually crosses two joints. So it's attached above the shoulder joint and it's attached below the elbow joint. So because of that, it can have actions at this joint and this joint because those tendons are crossing both of those. So it is a primary mover for flexing the forearm, right? So when you make a muscle, we're going to be pulling this part of the muscle or this part of the arm up when we flex. This is going to be pulling on that radial tuberosity, which is that insertion. And also helps with supination, which is this, right? Moving, twisting downwards, I guess. And then pronation is going back up. So that is your biceps brachii. Then if we're to remove that, sitting underneath that is this muscle here called the brachialis. So it originates on the kind of the bottom half of the humerus. So here's your humerus. So we can kind of see it's attaching all along here, the middle and distal end of the humerus. Inserts on the coronoid process of the ulna. So remember the hook of your ulna, so the olecranon, the trochlear notch, and the coronoid process. So it's going to be inserting on that coronoid process of the ulna. And it also helps to flex at the forearm. So we can think of the biceps brachii and the brachialis as synergists. They work together in the same action of flexing the forearm. Then we have the brachioradialis. This guy right here is number 13 on this particular model. So the brachioradialis is originating on the humerus, kind of towards the distal end or near that lateral epicondyle. And then it kind of turns around and inserts down all the way down here on the styloid process of the radius. That's why it's called brachioradialis, because it goes from the brachium up on the humerus all the way down and goes on to the styloid process of the radius. It also aids in flexing the forearm. So now we have biceps brachii, brachialis, and brachioradialis all help to flex the forearm. And then our last one for our upper arm muscles is our triceps, this big guy right here. Again, triceps means three heads. We're just going to give you two general attachment points, the origins of the scapula and the humerus. No markings associated with those. And it inserts on the olecranon process, the back of your elbow. And this is the antagonist of your biceps brachii because its action is to extend the forearm. So biceps does bending, triceps does straightening of your forearm. Okay, so those are the muscles of the arm. So biceps brachii, brachialis, right here, brachioradialis, triceps brachii. Now for the forearm, which can be challenging. It's kind of a tough one, but I'll try to give you some clues to break it down to make it a little bit easier. So the first two are on the list are actually deep muscles. So I have to remove some of these layers here. So we can see these two muscles here. This one is called the Pronator teres, and this one's called the supinator. And you'll notice the fibers kind of cross each other, almost like a crisscross, because their job is pronation and supination, right? Supination, pronation, supination, pronation. So what we're going to be seeing is they're doing opposite actions. The supinator originates on the lateral epicondyle of the humerus and inserts on the medial inserts on the radius. I was reading the next one down. So lateral epicondyle of the humerus and a little bit of the ulna, and inserts on the radius, okay? That's our rad radius, the bone that goes along our thumb side. And the supinator supinates the forearm, which is kind of nice. The action gives you a clue to the name. The Pronator teres originates on the medial epicondyle of the humerus and the cornoid process of the ulna, and inserts on the radius. So both of these, one is the lateral epicondyle is your supinator for the origin. The medial epicondyle is the origin for the pronator. So on either side of your humerus, we have these muscles coming in and crisscrossing, both attaching to different parts of the radius, which allows us to do this action, pronation and supination. Okay, the next 6 muscles, I'm gonna put all the muscles back together here. We have 3 flexors and we have 3 extenders. And when we talk about what's being flexed and what's being extended is our wrist and our fingers. So if we were to take a look at my forearm, right? So if I'm going to bend, decreasing the angle of my fingers and my wrist, this is flexion, right? And if I turn over and I straighten and pull back my wrist, this is extension. So we're gonna have 3 flexors and we're gonna have 3 extenders. So they're gonna be doing opposite actions and they're gonna be located in kind of these 3 positions. We got a pinky, we got a middle, we got a thumb. We got a pinky, we got a middle, we got a thumb, right? And ulna is pinky side, radius is thumb side. Pinky side is ulna, thumb side is radius. So if you keep that in mind, that might be helpful in trying to organize these muscles. So let's take a look at the, let's look at the flexors first. I'm gonna turn it this way. So this would be like my hand, right? So here's my thumb. So I'm gonna take a look at the flexors, which are gonna be flexing fingers and flexing wrist first, okay? So we have the flexor carpi radialis. So carpi means wrist and radialis means thumb side. So that's gonna be this one right here. It's number 17 on our model, this particular model. So this is your flexor carpi radialis because we can see that it's on the flexor side of the forearm and it's gonna go towards the thumb. Then we have the flexor carpi radialis. Sorry, flexor carpi radialis, flexor carpi ulnaris is on the pinky side, right? So that's helpful. So we have our radialis, we have our ulnaris, and then we have this deeper one called the flexor digitorum superficialis. It's the number 20. I know it's upside down, but it's this guy right here. So flexor digitorum are my digits. So we have a flexor carpi radialis is gonna be flexing my wrist this way. Flexor carpi ulnaris is gonna be flexing my wrist this way. And flexor digitorum superficialis is gonna be flexing my fingers. And you can actually feel, right? So if you just gently lay your one hand over the other one and flex your fingers, you feel that muscle contracting. That's your flexor digitorum superficialis. Or if you flex your wrist, you kind of pull your wrist up like this, you can feel flexor carpi radialis, flexor carpi ulnaris, flexor digitorum superficialis. Those 3 in that order. Okay. Then we can turn over to our extender side, right? Extension, kind of straightening your fingers or pulling your wrist back. We have an extensor carpi radialis. Longest. This one's got the word longest next to it because we have a brevis that we don't learn. So this one right here, it's number 14. It's right next to the brachioradialis. So if you can find that big, bulky brachioradialis, right next to it is going to be your extensor carpi radialis. Longest because the tendon is really long. This is the brevis, but that's not on our list. Okay. And then we're going to have the extensor carpi ulnaris, which is this one right here, number 26. We're ignoring this one. We don't have that on our list, and this one is not on our list. So we got to kind of ignore the ones that are not on our list. So here's our extensor carpi ulnaris. Here's our extensor carpi radialis longus, and then for the one in the middle is our extensor digitorum. So that's going to be straightening the fingers. So again, we can feel our flexor digitorum when we go like this, and we should feel our extensor digitorum when we go like this. So we have our extensor carpi radialis, we have our extensor carpi ulnaris, we have our extensor digitorum. Flexor carpi radialis, flexor carpi ulnaris, flexor digitorum superficialis. Okay, so those are all of the muscles. We have our pronator and supinator, and then we have 3 extenders, and we have 3 flexors. Okay. And I went over all of those actions without going over the origins and insertions. So let's do that. In my head, I'm like, wow, that went pretty fast because I skipped over all the origins and insertions. But now at least you know what they do, and the insertions might help explain that. So I think I did the pronator and supinator. Let's get back to our flexor carpi radialis. This guy originates on the medial epicondyle of the humerus and inserts on the base of the second and third metacarpal, all right, which are your hand muscles. Second and third, these guys right here. So the base down here. So that's our flexor carpi radialis. Flexes and abducts the wrist. Flexor carpi ulnaris also originates on the medial epicondyle of the humerus and a little bit of the ulna. And it inserts on the pisiform, the hamate, and the base of your fifth metacarpal. So that's going to be kind of bringing your wrist like this. So it flexes and adducts the wrist. And then our flexor digitorum superficialis, this guy right here, originates on the medial epicondyle of the humerus and the anterior portions of the radius and ulna, inserts on the mid-lateral surfaces of phalanges 2 through 5. So just the phalanges 2 through 5. I don't need the mid-lateral part. So 2 through 5, right? Your flexor digitorum superficialis. It does not control your thumb. There's other muscles that do that are not on our list. All right, so then the extensors. So we have our extensor carpi radialis longus, right? So this one right here. This originates on the humerus and inserts on the base of the second metacarpal. So that would be this one right here, because it's right next to our thumb. Then we have our extensor ulnaris. Extensor carpi ulnaris originates on the lateral epicondyle of the humerus and on the ulna, and inserts on the base of the fifth metacarpal. Extends and adducts the wrist. And then we have our extensor digitorum, the one that straightens your fingers. Originates on the lateral epicondyle of the humerus, inserts on the posterior surface of your phalanges 2 through 5, and helps to extend the digits, and also can help with your wrist extension as well. All right, so we just did muscles of the arm and the forearm. See you next time for muscles of the hip.